Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett't. Let's get started. It's that time of year where March Madness is upon us, and we got wrapping up the conference tournaments this weekend before we find out who's going to be in the NCAA tournament on Selection Sunday, which the show will air on 6 p.m. Eastern Time, CBS. So at this point, I've been, predicting my own bracket, for months now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, update it every single day. So make sure if you go to my LinkedIn profile at Dallin, Dallin, and then Durrett, if you go to my LinkedIn profile there, you'll see my updated brackets. But I'm going to go ahead and reveal on my podcast and talk about my recent updated bracketology with, this weekend, of course, there's still many games to go. Things are still up in the air. Games still have to be played. But it's going to come down to the wire for sure, especially as far as, seeding goes and bubble teams go. But first, let's get started for my number one seeds. So my number one overall seed will be Gonzaga. Because mainly they have, not only because they have the best record, but I feel like they've earned it. They've got some good non-conference wins. They won their conference tournament, so that I feel like they should definitely be the number one seed. Another number one seed would be Arizona. Now they still, I think they're in this Pac-12 semifinals, and apparently one of their key players is apparently got injured yesterday. So if they were to trip up in the Pac-12 tournament, they might slip down to a 2 seed. But as long as they win their conference tournament, then they'll be a 1 seed. Third is Kentucky. Now, this is basically whoever's the SEC championship winner between Kentucky, Auburn, and even Tennessee. So whoever wins that will be the number 1 seed. But for right now, I'm gonna think it's Kentucky. And then the last number 1 seed, I'm gonna go ahead and go with Kansas here. It was Baylor, but since Baylor got upset by Oklahoma last night in the Big 12 quarterfinals, they get bumped down to a 2 seed. So I feel like as long as Kansas can at least make the Big 12 title game, they could be the number 1 seed. But if they win it, then they'll definitely be the number 1 seed. So then that means for my 2 seeds, I have Baylor as I just mentioned earlier. I have Auburn as I just mentioned earlier. I have Tennessee as I just mentioned earlier. And then last but not least, I have let's see, who do I have? I have, who was it? Let me look. I'm drawing a blank here. Duke, that's what it was. Yeah. Well, if Duke wins the ACC tournament, then they'll be the number 2 seed. But if they slip up between now and then, they'll be bumped down to a 3 seed. And then as far as the other seeds go, of course, this can all be switched however you want. If you like it, could be up in the air. But I want to go through these seeds before I get to the bubble team area because that's where it gets interesting. So for my 3 seeds, I have Wisconsin, who's a Big Ten co-champion right now, regular season-wise. Purdue, Villanova, and Texas Tech. 4 seed Illinois, who's the other co-Big Ten champion. Providence, who's the Big East regular season champion. UCLA, and then Arkansas. 5 seed, I got UConn, Iowa, St. Mary's, and Texas. 6 seed, I got LSU, Michigan State, USC, and Colorado State. I'm predicting they're going to be in the Mountain West championship. But whoever wins the Mountain West championship between Colorado State and Boise State, and potentially if San State there might be a 6 seed, or at the least a 7 seed. 7, I got Houston. Now this one's interesting because their net ranking's 5 and they have a very good record. But the problem is they don't have a lot of quad one. It's like 1-7 in quad 1 games, but it's because they have no bad losses and they've done undefeated in quad 2 games. That's why Houston is still single digit seed, but that's why they're not like a top 3 or 4 seed like their net ranking would suggest. And then other 7 seeds, you got Boise State, Seton Hall, and TCU, mainly because TCU got the upset against Texas yesterday to kind of bump them up. Otherwise, they would have been in the 8-9 range. 8 seeds, I got Alabama, mainly because they fell last night to Vanderbilt. And I feel like that's going to cost them. San Francisco, San Diego State, and then Murray State. You may be thinking, why Murray State? Well, they only have 2 losses. Their net rankings in the top 20, and they're basically, because they went undefeated conference play, they're basically on a 23-4 game winning streak. They're a decent team. Now they're not high enough, to be a 5 or 6 or anything like that. But I feel like they're earning of a single-digit seed, despite being one big conference. 9 seeds, I got Iowa State, Ohio State, mainly because they faltered recently. Creighton, who's gotten themselves off the bubble recently, and then Marquette, who's kind of going downhill right now. But of course, they're not in danger of missing tournaments. That's why they're 9 seed. Okay, so now here's where we start getting to the bubble teams and all that, because if you're a 10 seed, or 11 seed or 12 seed, then you're in the bubble range. For 10 seed, I got Miami, and it's kind of interesting because Miami, they have a lot of good wins. They have 5 quad one wins. Uh, 4 or 5 quad two, 4 and 5 in quad two games. They have a road neutral record 13-4, which is excellent. For being in Power 5 conference. Now the net ranking is 63, which is not great, but again, net ranking's not end all be all, and it's a bunch of factors from different things. I don't think it determines an actual team's ranking, in my opinion. So I would kind of dismiss that. Now here's the one problem though with Miami, is that they have quad three losses. That is not going to sit well with the committee. Now because again they have so many great other wins, it will kind of cancel each other out. But it's a good thing that Miami didn't get upset against Boston College yesterday. Otherwise they could have been in contention for being out. But they'll get in as a 10 seed. Next I got Memphis. Mainly because they swept Houston, who's the regular season champion of America, and then they were able to also get other good wins in non-con, like they won at Virginia Tech, which is a fellow bubble team. They beat Alabama, so they have some other good ones there. Now, of course, they're facing UCF in the American quarterfinals today. So if they lose that, they're out, or most likely out. But as long as they win today and they at least make the title game, then they should be as a 10 seed. And then for my last 10 seed, I'm going with North Carolina. That they don't have a lot of quad one wins or solid wins per se. I mean, of course, winning at Duke basically helped them kind of cement themselves in the tournament. But again, it's like only 2-7 quad one games. Not a lot of meat there. Um, but the net ranking loves them 29, and I just feel like they're playing a lot better basketball as of recently. Okay, now for the 11 seeds. I'm gonna go with Michigan as one of them. I know Michigan lost to Indiana yesterday. That was a bad loss, and they're only like 17-14. But again, it's because of their resume. They have a lot of good quad one and quad two wins, with only one hiccup, which is quad three loss against Minnesota, but at home. But I just feel like again before yesterday's game, they're on the win streak. They've picked up like 3-4 good wins in the past 2 weeks. So it's like I feel like they should be in, although they could still be sweating on Selection Sunday. Then 11 seed, I got Rutgers. Now their net ranking is horrible. It's 78. Now, in context of last year, there's 2 teams. All the teams that made the tournament were above 50 net ranking, except for 2. One was Wichita State, which is in the low 70s, which is a shocker. No pun intended. There was a shocker. And then the other one was Michigan State, as we remember, we played UCLA in the first 4 games. They had a net ranking in the low 70s. So it shows that Rutgers can still get in, especially since they have 6 quad one wins and like 3 quad two wins. They're pretty good. But again, the only flaw here for Rutgers, I guess their road neutral record's 4-9, which is not great. But the only flaw here is that they have 3 quad 3 or 4 losses, with one of them being quad 3, but the other 2 being quad 4 losses. That is not acceptable. Now, in this case, I'm going to accept them being in for now, but they have to beat. They have to win their game today in the Big 10 semifinals, in my opinion. If they lose today, then they have a very good shot of being out. But if they win today, get another quad one and all that. Okay, now you're talking with them being in. But again, like that's gonna take some guts for the committee to say, okay, how much are we going to value good wins versus how much are we going to value bad losses? Because if you value them equally, then that's going to be an eyesore for Rutgers' resume. But if they rather value the good wins as better over the bad losses as worse, then that can help out Rutgers. So we'll see there. So then you get to the last 4 teams in. So I have 2 of the teams being on the 11 seed line and 2 of the teams being on the 12 seed line. So let's start with the 12 seed line first. So my first team that's in the last 4 in is Wyoming. They were supposed to be in the bracket, a couple weeks ago, but then they kind of faltered down the line recently. But one of the reasons why I'm having them in for now is, they have The 3 and 4 quad, which is not bad, but then they're 8-1 in quad two games, which is really good. Now again, they do have two bad losses. One's quad three and the other one's quad four, which is not great, especially for a mid-major team. You don't want two bad losses there, like for a P5 team or a P6 team in this case. But I just feel like Wyoming, did enough early on in the season where they can make up for this collapse. But again, if they play against Boise State today in the Mountain West semifinals. If they win, they're in. If they're not, then they're definitely going to be sweating on Selection Sunday. Because what's interesting is that in history, the average amount of mid-major teams that make it as an at-large bid is 5. And so, since I named Wyoming here, that means I'm already at 6. So it's definitely, again, that's just the average. This doesn't mean it's the case every single year, but it's still something to think about. The next team I have in is BYU. Now, they're one of those teams, it's kind of like stumbled down the stretch per se, but I feel like they have a good shot getting one. Their resume, 4 quad one wins, 3 quad two wins, like that's pretty good compared to like a couple other Power 5 schools who may only have 1 or 2 quad one wins, who are kind of lacking in that department, and they only have one bad loss, which is at Pacific. Again, it's a quad 4. That's a very bad loss there. Don't get me wrong, but otherwise, they got good wins. Despite being in the WCC, they've got 3, like I said, 4 quad wins, and then plus their non-conference strength of schedule is good, and that's going to be a big factor for the committee to think about. Overall strength of schedule, but specifically non-conference, because obviously conference can't control, but the non-conference schedule, that the coaches schedule that, not the ADs rush, so they have control over what they want to do there. And BYU, has a overall strength of schedule 29, and their non-conference strength of schedule, is top 100, which is good because there's a lot of other bubble teams where they're in the 200s or even 300s in non-conference strength of schedule, and typically the committee, will favor the people who tried in non-conference and schedule versus people who didn't. So that's going to be interesting to see there what they're going to do. Also, the eye test, because while BYU's beaten some teams against, the better teams in the WCC as of the past month or so, they haven't won any. So, and the eye test, doesn't quite show it per se. So it all depends on what the committee values the most there. But for me, I'm going to keep them in for now. Now again, teams can jump them up over this next week and all that. But for right now, they're in. Third, I got Oklahoma. Now, they were in my next 4 out category yesterday, and then they beat Baylor. So now it's like, okay, do I just bump them to first 4 out, or I'm going to bump them to last 4 in? For me, I'm going to do last 4 in for now. Now, the 18, 14, 7, 11 in the Big 12 is not great there. But I mean, Iowa State has a losing record in the Big 12, and they're a 9 seed, same TCU as a 7 seed. So again, not the end all be all there. And their percentage of quad wins are 4-11, which is not great. But again, they have 4 quads and 6 quad 2 wins, only 1 bad loss. And again, I just feel like since they got that win at Baylor, I mean, I feel like, that could be enough to get them into the tournament, especially since, again, resume-wise, against the other bowl teams, that's a pretty good resume there. 4 quad wins, 6 quad 2 wins, being in the best conference, which is the Big 12, in my opinion. And then last but not least, you can go many different directions there. For right now, I'm going to go with Notre Dame, mainly because they were a 10 seed just a couple days ago to me, so it'd be steep to drop them all the way out to the first 4 out. And they went from having 2 quad wins, 3 quad stakes, North Carolina being bumped up to a quad 1 win, and again, quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, all that is based on a team's net ranking, which is based, offensive, defensive efficiency, strength of schedule, margin of victory, stuff like that. North Carolina, Notre Dame, they have their best win was at home versus Kentucky, and if they get in, that's going to be the reason why. I mean, they picked up other few wins in ACC play, but the resume is kind of lacking, which is why they're square on the bubble right now. But because they went Kentucky, I'm going to keep them in for now. And then first team out will be Xavier, mainly because they suffered a quad 3 loss in the first round of the Big East tournament against Butler. I know they have a good resume, they have a lot of good wins, but I feel like that one is their second bad loss, and I feel like just, again, momentum-wise, that's bad to show the committee they're out. SMU, they have a good enough resume, but I want to see how they do in the American Conference Tournament before putting them in, especially since they're a mid-major team. Virginia Tech, they got 2 poor wins, especially last night. Upsetting Notre Dame was a good win, but I want to see how they do tonight. They win tonight, they're in. If they're not, then we'll see how they do. Texas A&M's also in the mix if they can upset Auburn today. Then you got VCU and Dayton, both you need to make at least the A10 conference tournament game to be interesting there. So that's kind of like all the bubble teams there. Thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful weekend.